Star Wars 7 by 7 episode 2976. It's a What to Watch Now Saturday episode, and I was able to get to an IMAX theater and check out the Andor preview, and so that's what we're going to be talking about here today. Punch it! Hey Rebel Rouser, I'm Alan Voivod and this is Star Wars 7 by 7, your daily dose of Star Wars joy. And thank you so much for joining me for it. So before we begin, I'll just quickly remind you that if you haven't yet had the opportunity to like and retweet the tweets that I've been putting out proposing questions for Mark Hamill to entice him to join me for a conversation in celebration of the 3000th episode of the podcast here, I will link once again to those tweets where the questions have been posted on Twitter, either through my own personal account, Alan Voivod, or the podcast show's account, SW7X7 Podcast. Thank you so much to everybody who has done so far, and it's been wonderful to reconnect with you as well for some folks that I haven't chatted with on Twitter in a while, so that's been terrific. That's a wonderful side benefit of this for sure. So thank you again for sharing. And on Saturday, I will be posting question 4 at some point during the day too. So keep an eye out for that if you happen to be checking your Twitter feed. All right, so let's talk about this Andor preview. There's essentially 3 elements to it. First of all, I'll just give you the refresher that there are 150 IMAX theaters in the US and Canada that are showing this special re-release of Rogue One with the Andor preview in front of it. And there's basically 3 elements to it. Part 1 is a conversation with Diego Luna and Tony Gilroy. So they're sitting in a room talking about the Andor series, just kind of giving you an overview of the ideas of it. There's nothing really new necessarily there. I mean, we've talked about a lot of that stuff over the last few days with the interviews that have been done and the quotes that I've been sharing from those interviews, right? The only things that are really new about it are that they definitely make a much more direct connection between the character Kassa, K-A-S-S-A. That's the young kid that we see looking out at what appears to be like the strip mine stuff. And there's also a comment by Tony Gilroy where he talks about the taking over of corporate planets, if I caught it correctly. And then visually, the scenes that we've seen are mostly the same, except they also give us a couple of behind the scenes looks. So for example, the scene where we see Cassian in an Imperial officer's uniform in line with other Imperial officers, right? So they show us that moment, and then they show us a behind the scenes moment where you see him and he's kind of looking around and the cameras are there and whatnot. There's another scene like that with Denise Goff coming into what appears to be somebody's residence or office with Death Troopers following behind her, and then they switch to another shot which is from behind the camera, and you see the camera as they're filming them really close as they come into this particular place, wherever that is. There's a few different shots like that. Then the second part of it is the Andor trailer, so the most recent one that we've all seen. Nothing new about that. And when they did that, I thought, oh, okay, yeah, so it's just a brief conversation, a couple of behind the scenes things, and then the trailer, like, not all that overwhelming. But then the third part is something that is brand new and more extensive, and also actually integrates stuff that we've already encountered. So first I'll tell you what it is, which is not really spoilery, and then you can decide if you want to stick with me for it. I mean, it's not especially spoilery of anything, really, other than just maybe the individual scene. But it has to do with the meeting between Luthen and Cassian that we've seen previously depicted, where Luthen is giving his sales pitch to Cassian and saying, don't you want to, do something real, right? Like that whole situation when they're in, what looks like that, abandoned factory kind of setting. So we get more of the details of that scene in this special preview. And I wish I had actually recorded it while I was there, just so that way I could, look back at it and, refresh my memory and be able to bring everything to you, completely. But I did not do that. So yeah, we're going mostly from memory here, but it's really only a couple of details that I think I've missed. Like, for example, the meeting happens because Cassian has acquired some sort of Imperial technology. It looks like, some box that gets fitted into something, and it came from an Imperial shipyard on some planet. Didn't catch the name of the planet. Didn't happen to recognize it. Doesn't necessarily mean that it hasn't existed previously, but yeah, it slipped right through me. But Luthen's impressed, and he's so impressed, in fact, that he wants to know how Cassian managed to get it, how he got into an Imperial facility to get this thing, and he's willing to pay him 1,000 more credits just to find out the how. Cassian doesn't reveal his methods, but the speech that we've heard him deliver in the trailer when he talks about how easy it is to steal from the Empire and they would never suspect someone like him in their house and they're so fat and satisfied, all of that comes from this scene. This is how Cassian responds to Luthen's inquiries about how he got this particular piece of Imperial technology. So that's what I meant when I said earlier that there is some new stuff about this, but it also integrates stuff that we've experienced before, right? It takes his dialogue, and that dialogue has been spread out across different things in the trailers, and puts it right where it's belonging in the actual scene. Now, through the course of the conversation, we find out that Luthen has been working with Bix Caleen, so Adria Arjana's character, for some time, and he knows that they have a scam going where they bribe quartermasters who are leaving the ships on Ferrix to leave extra stuff that they shouldn't be leaving there in order for them to then sell it in the black market. But Luthen has somehow had his eye on Cassian and done some research about him, knows more about Cassian, and says, like, there's a conversation that involves getting caught if they don't get out of there soon and that they could be hung in the town square, and Luthen says, oh, just like your father was, right? And I'm paraphrasing, but that's just generally the gist of how the conversation goes. And Cassian is like, who are you? You know, what do you know about me? Why are you doing this? Like, pulls out his blaster and is holding it to Luthen's head at one point. But it turns out they are not fast enough to get out of there because those officers that we've seen, of whom Kyle Soller is one, they show up, or at least some of them show up and start blasting. And that's when Cassian and Luthen are in the firefight in this abandoned factory facility situation. They're able to take out 2 of those officers, and then another one radios back to seemingly headquarters for help. So it turns out that they apparently knew that Cassian was going here, that something nefarious was going to be happening because they trailed him into there and it was known back in headquarters. And so Kyle Soller's character, Cyril Cairn, right, is, you know, rushing out to go out to the facility and help. And the other person who's there, who is the one talking about pockets of fomenting in the trailer, he's saying that, you know, we told you not to, you know, go in there. So it was supposed to be, you know, a stakeout kind of situation, and they jumped the gun apparently. So action ensues, and I'm not sure, it looks like Cassian makes an attempt to snatch that bit of Imperial technology before they get out of there, and it happens really fast, and I can't tell whether he got it, and they don't follow the scene through its conclusion all the way to show whether he actually did or didn't. There's a, you know, little alcove that they're able to slip through before all of these, you know, giant things that have been suspended by chains come crashing down to the ground. And that's pretty much the end of it. Now, connecting it with other things we've seen, there was a photo in Empire magazine as part of their coverage. I believe it was in Empire. If it was in Total Film, I apologize, but you may have seen it already. It's one where Cassian is on some sort of speeder bike and Luthen Rail is riding on the back of it. So one might guess that after they escape out of this abandoned factory place, that the 2 of them are on that speeder and making good their escape. There's also that scene in one of the trailers where you hear Luthen's monologue and his voiceover, and he says, I need all the heroes I can get. And there seems to be something flying across the top of what look like brine pools. We'll get to that in a moment. So, you know, one wonders whether this is Cassian and Luthen escaping from that whole confrontation situation, and they're flying across the brine pools to some other location where Luthen's ship is, perhaps. Now, those pools, I'm calling them brine pools because it looks very similar to what you see when you look at lithium mining brine pools. And I think copper mining, like, I think there's something about brine pools related to that too. One of the things that occurred to me as I rethought about that was, wouldn't it be crazy if Cassian's been on a planet where they've been extracting all these, precious metals and doing this mining and whatnot, and all the material is being used for the Death Star that he is going to be a part of, getting the plans for 5 years later in Rogue One. Just something I thought was kind of an interesting thing to consider. So anyway, that's what I've got for you. If you have the opportunity to go to an IMAX theater and check out this preview, it's definitely worth the price of admission. And also, I want to say that on the big IMAX screen, the Andor series footage looks incredible. It actually looks like it was meant to be seen in IMAX, and good heavens, if they ever show the full episodes on IMAX, I will definitely see about an opportunity to check that out. And that is what I've got for you for today's episode of the show. So it just remains for me to say thank you so much for joining me for it, as always, and may the Force be with you wherever in the world you may be.
7 is not endorsed or sponsored yet by Lucasfilm Limited, Disney, or 20th Century Fox, and is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Star Wars, the Star Wars logo, all names and pictures of Star Wars characters, vehicles, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Lucasfilm Limited, or their respective trademark and copyright holders. May the Force be with them. All original content is copyright 2021 by Star Wars 7x7. We hope you love it.